Hello, everyone, and from wherever you are joining, good morning, good evening, and good afternoon. In this episode, our guest speaker, Joe Augustin, is going to cover insights about the hubris of humanity in the face of AI. Welcome, Joe, to our show, VectoScalar Tech Talk.
Hi, thank you very much.
You have a very nice setup. We can already get the feel of being into the world of AI. Thanks for that. And for the benefit of our audience, let me give you a quick introduction about Joe. Joe Augustin has been in communication business for almost 40 years. As a broadcaster, he served his morning show audience for more than 20 years. Today, he coaches industry's leaders how to create greater impact with their presentation by enhancing the quality of their story. He is the creator of Instant Gravitas method and has been using communication and similar technologies in his work. So, Joe, tell us more about your work, that how your journey started, bro. Because from communication, you started from broadcasting, and now you are talking about technology. How the transition happened?
Well, my story begins actually many years ago. I was 16 years old in Brunei, and there was this little program that was on the radio there that basically invited people to be a DJ for a day. And I had a pretty good feeling, as 16-year-olds tend to do, whether they're right or not, that they could do a pretty good job of it. And I asked and got a chance to present a show, and that was the first time I got on the radio. I've since been on radios in Brunei, in Australia, and then when I was about 21 years old, I actually went to a real radio school. And after that, there was an opportunity to come back to Singapore and join radio here. And the idea of radio usually is you go professionally from town to town. Every 2 years, you get fired or you find a new market. But what happened is that first job that I got in Singapore turned out to be a 20-plus year career, which eventually found me doing the morning show on the number one English radio station and a number of other stations as well. So it's a very kind of a nice radio story. And I always talk about how people usually start their careers in radio, getting fired, and then moving on. What happened to me is I kind of built myself up, and right at the end, I got fired a lot. So that's the radio story for me. While I was doing radio, I was working on my own presentation skills as well, trying to sharpen the skills of what I was doing on radio because I had a real passion for stories. And along the way, I picked up techniques from various people like Robert McKee, who is considered by many to be almost the father of the way movie scripts are written now in the US. Some people really like what he does, and some people really hate what he does, but that's usually a good sign of being influential. I love Aaron Sorkin as a writer as well. I study magic. I study mentalism. And what I've done is now combine all that knowledge plus all the experience I've had, watching countless presentations live and in person into a business now where I help business leaders become better at presenting. I teach them the skills that help them to present better. I teach them the techniques to make their stories better so that they can have more impact when they take the stage or when they take the screen.
That's so interesting. And you talked about Robert McKay and how you learned the art of presenting from him. That's a great story in itself. Now, talking about the topic.
Robert McKee is actually the guy who writes stories. So the presentation arts have been from everybody else, like Steve Jobs and other people. Yeah, but Robert McKee is someone who talks about writing. He's actually the guy who's behind scripts. So you talk about movies, scripts, and stuff like that. The book he's written is called Story, and it was a big kind of a webinar, or not webinar. Sorry, it was a workshop that I attended for 3 days.
That's interesting. And talking about the topic of the hubris of humanity in the face of AI, that's a kind of a bold statement because we have had speakers in the past episode of this podcast, VectoScalar Tech Talk as well. And most of them have been talking about that it's not going to replace, it's going to complement, but you're making a strong statement. Give us more about that insight.
Well, I call it hubris because that is the belief that we can be better and the belief that we are better. And I think it's a false assumption because if you think about what AI is and what AI has been for the longest time, AI is not a new thing. It's just something that people have just, I think, only for many people, it's just something that they've come to terms or heard about most recently. And the reason why they've actually come to be exposed to it most recently is that it's becoming better, or it's become good enough to catch the attention of people and to surprise people. And their experience of AI may not be the leading edge experience of AI. They have an idea of what AI is like. They have heard of AI, and just in a survey of a number of people I met in the last few days, people who are in business and doing the work and all that, and I asked them, well, first of all, you know about AI? Yeah, I know about AI. And I go like, well, do you actually use AI? And surprisingly, a lot of people actually don't use AI. So there's a number of people who are carrying the narrative that AI can't replace us or won't replace us because of the humanity, the aspects of humanity, right? How human we are. And I think many people forget that AI's job, job number one, if you talk about what the scientists and everybody is working on AI right now is trying to do, at least from the ones that create generative AI, is to be human. Right, so that's not it's not a it's not a byproduct. AI isn't trying to, in its best sense, to sort of be human. It is actually trying to be human. It is trying to beat the tests that people say prove that you're not human. So it's hubris to think that all these people who are working as hard as they are, and with all the progress that we have and all the trillions and trillions of calculations every second that are helping AI come up with a kind of response in real time, that we are going to be better than this. It's not really true.
Got it. I to some extent understand, but do you have any experience, demo, or case study which you can show to our audience to make us understand that to what level, as per your experience, AI has gone?
Okay, so in the world that I live in, this is the creative world that I live in especially, and if you think of what's happening in Hollywood, and you've heard about the writer's strike, the actor's strike, all that's been happening recently, right? And you may think that people are just being protectionist or being cautious about the future. Now, the reason why they are is because we're on the edge right now of being able to put together entire scenes without any real actors, right? Any real people. And that people are already quite scared by that. Right now we have CGI, which is very, very powerful. So your scenes that you see in Star Wars, where you see people who you know are dead. These are actors that have long gone, but those scenes are recreated and their voice is recreated so that it's real. These are good enough to be used in the dramatic arts. And what the protection, the big argument right now all about is to prevent all that kind of stuff from happening. So I'm just going to play something for you right now. This is going to be on my video screen, and hopefully the audio comes across as well. This is a video that's produced entirely on speech to video. This is speech to video. And there's some creative elements in there, but the video aspect of this is all entirely done speech to video, okay?
Do you ever wonder how Toys R Us and Geoffrey the Giraffe came to be? The son of a bike shop owner, Charles Lazarus, had a vision that would go on to change toy stores forever. To watch the full story, go to toysrus.com/studios.
Okay, so that's
interesting.
That's a video, and it's not with any single, real actor. All of it is the work, of course, of a human person prompting it, trying to get the right kind of shot for it. There's probably some music that could be AI as well. I can't tell for sure. The voiceover, I'm not too sure is voiceover or not, whether it's an AI or not. But just the visuals and the fact that at that level, you can create visuals that humans would struggle to create in their own studios with their own material. But in a sense that what is described to the AI is the scene in abstract terms. They describe what, all the scenes that you see where there's a giraffe that's animated, that's described in AI or in text to AI, and AI then has to interpret it and then compose the shot. I mean, this is what's happening as far as AI is concerned. And if you've used ChatGPT as well, you think, well, the script's like this. Okay, it takes a human being to create that script. If you ever try doing this with ChatGPT, just get ChatGPT to write you a commercial, for instance, and it comes up with pretty good stuff and pretty interesting stuff. So, will AI completely remove the need for human beings? Maybe not, but will it replace us? I think we're much more likely to serve in tandem with AI to assist AI get what it's trying to do. So if you write something now with AI and you want to have a commercial and you put together a brief, it's very likely it's going to come up with something that actually is pretty commercial. It will be pretty good. It will be very better than what somebody else can do, especially in a very short amount of time. And then what happens is we work maybe with the AI or with somebody else to try and interpret it and make it happen. But the illusion that AI isn't replacing us, that's just not true. So I'm going to give you one more thing to listen to. This is this is about my category because I do voiceovers as well. And voiceover is an area where people think, it's got to be, everything has to be so emotive. You have to get actors to do all the different things. Well, so I do voiceovers as well. And I don't know whether you can hear it from my voice. I think I do a pretty kind of dynamic sort of a presentation. So I'm just going to play a little thing here where I've included myself in this, by the way. So all the voices you're about to hear are saying things that were never said out loud. So just have a listen. I'm just going to keep quiet while I play this, and hopefully it goes out.
There is no reason to believe that the average human can do this better than I can.
There is no reason to believe that the average human can do this better than I can.
There is no reason to believe that the average human can do this better than I can.
There is no reason to believe that the average human can do this better than I can.
There is no reason to believe that the average human can do this better than I can. And all for the low, low price of $22 a month.
So my question to many people who are out there is, can you really do better than AI? And if you think that you can, well, come to the party, but most likely you can't. So yeah, it's pure hubris to think that AI can't replace us. And I'm only just talking right now about the creative arts. If you want to talk about anything else as well, any kind of job that's been described where there is a textbook or written text or deep learning that's been put out there on the internet, even more likely that AI is able to replace you and work much faster than you. And you just don't realize it yet.
Got it. And thanks for sharing those two audios and the previous video as well, where you mentioned that it is coming from transitioning from a voice to a video. Just voice input was given and then it turned automatically into that video. And it was pretty clear, very relatable. And the voices that you shared also, we can hear that what you call the emotional content and emotions were there. So slowly and gradually we can see probably within few days it will be hard. I've myself experienced that sometime when we see on website login those captchas, which were to see the computer and human apart, nowadays it's getting difficult to get the correct answer for the visual ones. So sometime now I have to use the audio ones because the visual ones are so complicated. Sometimes it gets difficult to actually see them. So as a human, that difficulty has already started. Now, talking about the problem, and VectoScalar as a technology company which is into actually developing solutioning using the AI solution, where definitely there is a industry aspect which is focusing upon that how to use it to the most. So what is actually happening in the communication industry, if to begin that example with that, how much AI consumption has already been started in your experience and in Singapore, particularly where you work in?
Well, I don't think people are going to report good work is not being their own work. So it's very unlikely that people who are doing some really good work with the help of AI are absolutely just going to come and say, "Oh, I used AI." But I'm going to say it's pretty extensive. I'm going to say that if someone isn't doing it, then what they're doing is they're just working it the hard way, right? Because if you want to think about how creativity works, or communication works, you really have to think about what the job is. And the job that you've got is like you've talked about in your own title as well. You talk about being a
Yeah.
curator, right? So the work that we should be doing with AI is using AI to generate quantity, lots and lots of quantity. And in general, because of the quantity, it usually comes with a certain level of quality as well. And maybe the job is for us then to be curators and say, okay, well, of these, I like this, and I'm going to turn this into development. It's pretty much what I think the rest of the tech world is like as well, right? I mean, people just they come up with ideas, they pitch, they use their available resources, and maybe the best 5, best 3, best 2 then get brought up, and then maybe only one of them gets taken to market. Creativity is, when it's done industrially, that's the process. People have the illusion that you are just a genius that's on the spot and you come up with something right now. No, it's a product of a lot of work that happens ahead of time.
Yeah, it's definitely a product and which has matured in a very fast manner. That adoption is happening after, especially the Chat GPT, the way it's shown the use cases to the people, that how it can actually be utilized. Now, I'll take a different pathway to my questions now. That you talk about the Gravitas method, your creator of the Instant Gravitas method. So can you share a bit more information about that method and how does it work?
Well, the idea of Instant Gravitas came about because I do webinars for some very valuable clients, they're valuable brands. And when they do their webinars, they do them from homes, they do them from all over the world. And what I was looking at was basically this: that very first moment when someone lays eyes on you, they decide something about you. They look at your setting or the way your hair is done or the shirt you're wearing or whatever it is, all these things. We call them maybe first impressions, but we don't necessarily know how to say it out loud and say, oh, something about this, I didn't like the way his this or that was, whatever it was, right? What I was working was with my clients saying, how do we compose what your background looks like, what your set looks like, what your lighting looks like, so that the moment you come on, and with your sound as well, you impress, you work at a higher level than just someone who shows up. I mean, if you've been on online meetings, I'm sure you've been there before as well. Many impressive people have shown up on a Zoom and been less than impressive. And if there's somebody who isn't already sold on the person, in their mind, you're actually having to build yourself up and slowly work your way up in terms of the gravitas. But if you can show up and instantly come in at a rate where people go like, oh, okay, this guy's, I'll pay attention. And so there's several aspects to that. So what I do is I have now extended that to in-person as well, where I help executives or help anybody who wants to be more effective. I guess some people maybe speak in terms of executive presence. I try to teach them some of the skills, some of the thinking, some of the mindsets that actually help you to perform in such a way that you do have instant gravitas. The moment you enter the room, you are better off in terms of getting the attention and respect even before you've said a word.
Got it. And that seems quite useful. Before taking further, I have one question. So let me take up that question. Shubham, you are asking, can this method be useful for software engineers? Because majority of our audience is either the tech entrepreneurs, engineers. So yeah. What's your take?
Well, here's the thing that I have with, especially with a lot of smart people, right? You're smart, so you want to explain everything. And I think this happens all the time. You're faced with a situation where you're talking and talking and talking, and before you realize, you look across and you can see somebody really not being engaged anymore. They're not really following. They're confused, right? And part of that is because your approach to how you communicate and reach out to somebody has missed the point. you're forgetting that there's a human being on the other side. And what you should be doing, first of all, is connecting and impressing the person rather than trying to speak directly to, the brains. And it's actually very difficult for someone who is not in your head, to have that same sort of sense from you as well. So you'll find that in the industry, for instance, with software engineers, when software engineers get together, I mean, they can have a really good time talking about Python, right? But when you have executives coming together with a software engineer, this is the gap that's happening right now. They're both talking about different things. They have both got different priorities. And for the software engineer to have to be effective, to reach across to the marketing person, they need to understand how to put their ideas together in such a way that the marketing person goes, oh, wow, that's interesting. I want to know more. I want to try to understand a bit more about this. So that's a really long way to say yes, it works. Yeah.
Got that point. Shubham, thanks for asking the question, and I hope your question is answered. Now, you talk about executives, and one of the particular use case that I frequently come across is entrepreneurs who are looking for investment for their new tech ideas, or probably it has gone and it's at the growth stage. They want investment, and they go in front of investors to get that investment. So is there any quick advice for them that how they can increase their gravitas if they are having an online presentation to get more investment into their project?
Is there any quick advice? Well, I mean, instant gravitas, unfortunately, doesn't come instantly. You kind of have to work on a few things. But one thing I would do is, like, especially if you're online, you've got to do some work in terms of what your visuals look like. So, like for yourself, you got your set the way it is. It's quite. I think it's good for the purpose of what you're doing. And in terms of what I do as well, because my work is about communications, it's about audio, it's about voiceovers, it's about the history of what I do. So the background behind me tells a bit of that story as well. It's consistent with that. And I've invested to make sure that it all looks really top rate as well. So what you see behind me is virtual, but the technology that's being used to make sure that it comes across well, make sure that you don't see it as virtual. So, I mean, we were on the air just moments before, and you saw me change the background because I was, looking for the right one. But for your audience that tuned in, up till this moment when I said I'm not in a studio, or not at least in the studio that you see behind me, they probably didn't know.
Okay, so these are the few things. But nowadays, with all the features and settings in most of the video sharing applications, they by default show a way to remove the background. So any things that they can do with that setup bit better, or then if they require additional setup, what is that basic additional setup?
Well, what I would ask you to think about is the impression you're trying to make with a person when you're speaking across from them, right? Do you want to make a personal connection, or do you want to create a sense of slight superiority, or you want to be subservient? I mean, these are all strategic. You may have a reason to come across as subservient, but for the most part, I'm going to say don't do that. Just come across as even leveled with the person. So this is a big tip. Have your camera, as far as you can, have your camera at your eye level so that it's just slightly below your eye level, because face-to-face works that way, right? The eyes are going to be at eye level, but your camera is going to be just somewhere around your nose level if you're being very picky. But that gives you a very straight-on, very realistic kind of view. So one of the things you always see online is someone has the laptop sitting on the desk and it's looking upwards, and you have a view of what their nostrils look like. It's not the prettiest of angles. And if you want to be more impressive, these are all subtle cues. The brain, or at least the mind, the person who is connecting with you, is making judgments about you very subtly. They don't mean to judge you. They're going to be asking themselves questions about, like, if you're, let's say you're putting in an idea and you're pitching something and it requires a little bit of faith, right? A little bit of extra belief in what you have to say. Now, if something about you is making me sense that, this person isn't quite as much a person who looks into details or hasn't bothered with this, that, or the other. I mean, look, if you don't even dress up for the occasion, sometimes people do that. They say, we're just online. Why do we have to worry about that? Well, we kind of do, because people do forget. That's what it is. And we are used to the idea, when you look at what's happening online or on screen right now, right? People might get the impression that, all I'm doing is this online meeting is informal and what have you, but you forget that the screen represents a medium that is what other high-end productions are portrayed on. So I'm watching Mission Impossible on the same screen that I'm going to have a Zoom meeting with you on. And that's my brain's comparison. And if you come across and you open up, let's say on Zoom, and you've got a set that looks Hollywood, it looks really good, it's really impressive, no one's going to, well, not no one, people have actually stopped me and said, oh, your set looks fantastic. But most people don't realize what's going on, but instantly what they've done is they put you on a higher pedestal already.
Yeah. So these are the things, probably, as we say, the first impression is the last impression. These are the things that one can improve upon and increase their gravitas in quick manner, especially for tech entrepreneurs, because investment is everything. So if we can get the higher level of investment, and the time is short, it's not that they are having long time discussion to have that kind of presentation in front of investors. Now, coming back to probably the AI part, from the perspective that we just discussed, the example that the setup, probably the way you are using and myself using, is involving that green screen, or probably the different kind of AIs that are being used by system if we are not using them explicitly. Probably when you started, you talked about that you started 40 years ago into the broadcast industry and in the communication industry. So how many people would have been required to do the similar type of work, the things that have been managed single-handedly nowadays at that point of time?
Well, I mean, I think the first of all, technology has that effect, right? It is going to make some work redundant, right? So over the years, the things that we used to do, they're no longer relevant. I used to edit by cutting physical tape. Tape was actually recorded. An audio was recorded on an actual tape, and I would actually use a razor blade and cut that. And then we moved to the digital editing, and now I don't even, you don't even have a real hard drive. I used to have huge hard drives, right? It was this high and this wide, and that was just 8 megabytes. Like that used to be a big deal. Actually, no, I exaggerate. It was 8 gigabytes, right? But it was that much, but 8 gigabytes. And now, your phone has a terabyte of storage or high speed storage on it. So in terms of what has been, or what was necessary before, a lot of things have basically moved fast. The problem with AI is that AI's number one job is to learn what people are doing already, and to learn to do it quickly, and then to try to do it, and then get feedback from you. And after enough cycles of that, it actually gets really good at it, right? So every time you do one of the those things on a website where you're saying, like, find the bicycles or identify the cat. It used to be cats, but we've moved on from cats because the computers are very good with cats now. We've gone on to sidewalks, we've gone to bridges, we've gone to bicycles, motorcycles, whatever it is, because what we're doing is AI is asking you, this looks like a motorcycle to me. Does this look like a motorcycle to you? And then you go like, yeah, it is a motorcycle. That's what it actually is doing. And over time, people kind of, or the AI actually begins to learn how this happens. And then with greater confidence, it's able to produce it, right? So AI is learning to do what we do based on what we have taught it to do. So all the output that's out there right now is the learning material for AI. So if you can find it on the internet, AI is already trying to learn it. That's what you got to think about, right? And that extends not just to graphics, not just to videos. It extends to the kind of work you do. So all the research articles that have been out there, if you think about what Google has done with their academic research, right? All those articles are on Google. All those articles can be can be kind of can be browsed. The spiders can go all over it and try and figure out the information. And AI's job is to learn. And one of the things that makes AI so interesting is we kind of try to figure out a whole lot of stuff behind the deeper thinking of AI. AI is just, and actually human beings to a great extent, are just about knowing what the next word is supposed to be. And why ChatGPT is as impressive to us is because it can figure out what the next word is going to be in the context. If you give it a context, you give it a reason, it'll come up with what is the next appropriate word. And that has all been learned from what has come before from human beings. Now, it does mean that AI might be influenced by the kind of nonsense you might find on the internet as well. I mean, there's certain topics, if you try to find AI's opinion about it, it can sound really bizarre because the only people who have expressed themselves on this particular topic maybe have been a bit of bizarre, or maybe their opinions have been bizarre. But that's all it is, right? So AI is just a very confident source. It's very confident of what word goes next because it's seen so many words like this before. This is the word that's going to go with this right now.
Okay, so finding the next word is probably the main target for AI. But in that case, for the professional, what's your advice? Or when you have this discussion about the overconfidence that humanity is having about AI can't replace, if it can actually replace, what is the last resort for people? What they should do?
Well, what you should do is look at your own career and go, how do I replace myself with 10 times as much productivity? And how do I put myself in charge of this? Right. So if you learn the skills correctly, what you are going to become, let's say as a software engineer, is you are going to become the expert to be able to monitor and supervise other AIs to do the coding. So you're going to be the prompt engineer who is just brilliant at getting your AI software engineers to come up with solutions, and maybe you can architect the whole thing. And there's certain things really that AI can do so much better than we can, and we just have to come to terms with that. As in, like, if we want to try to, for instance, if you're talking about having this huge spreadsheet of data,
Yep.
all kinds of information that maybe there's millions of fields. We won't be able to handle it, right? But I can tell you what's going to happen. If you just take that whole field, if you can figure a way to digitize the whole thing as a graphic, and you put it into ChatGPT 4.0 and ask it a question regarding that data, it can do it. Like ChatGPT 4.0 can watch a movie for you in faster than real time and give you details about the storyline and things in the background that, first of all, we didn't even see because our attention wasn't as wide as it is able to do. And we couldn't do it as fast as well. So my advice to people who first of all understand that they're completely replaceable is to participate in that process and say, well, okay, how would I replace myself in this, and how can I take control of that? So if I am a film editor and AI's film editing skills are going to be brought into the fore and they're going to make things really quick. If I want to stay in this industry, because that's the other question as well, do you really want to stay in the industry after it's kind of become a redundant thing? That's another question for you. But if you want to stay in the industry, then what you have to be is become more relevant to the industry. Because if the editor has become irrelevant, then what has become relevant is the manager of the editors, the people who have to do that. Now, if the managers have become irrelevant, then what's the next thing you have to kind of figure out? And if you want to stay, then you have to work it out. It's not a free lunch. You're not allowed to say, "Oh, I'm so sorry. This is I don't like it." The world is coming. So if you want to argue with the onslaught of AI for me, it's like just being at the edge of a tidal wave and saying, "I don't agree with you." You can do that even with the best and most convincing arguments, but AI is coming for you.
That seems like a scary world, and I think it seems like the way we go to fun parks and there are these rides. For some people, it seems like an excitement. For others, it's like fearful. I think same thing is happening in the industry right now, where one set of people are getting terrified, job lost, and that kind of conversation. The pessimist approach and the optimist approach that it is going to complement us, but your thought is in between. Your argument that at least we should not be that overconfident that it's not going to replace, it's already replacing some of our job.
Well, I think if you approach it with the sense that it's not going to replace you for the reasons that you think are real, and then those reasons turn out to be false, you're going to be a lot more upset than I am, right? So if it happens to be that ultimately AI is not able to replace it because it wasn't human enough, well, you would have made yourself better. You would have worked on more skills. You wouldn't have been standing still saying that no, I'm just going to keep doing this because there's nobody can do it as well as I can, right? So you have a lot of craftsmen, for instance, who over the years have said, "Oh, there's some things that machines just cannot do." And that's always been true up and until the next thing happens, right? So right now, people talk about, for instance, that there's been no machine that can crochet, right? Guess what people are trying to work on? And the moment that machine is able to do it and actually do the crocheting, well, that's going to change the crochet business. Now, it turns out that crocheting itself is not a high value business. But if you're trying to make a career out of it and the machines figure out, or someone figures out how to make a machine to crochet, then why would I want to pay for that when I can get it done perhaps a lot cheaper and a lot faster?
Yeah. So the world is changing, and with that thought, we are coming closer to our today's podcast on VectoScalar Tech Talk. Thanks, Joe, for joining the show. Any last message for our audience to make them show your experience or your thing about broadcasting or anything interesting, so that they can slightly go away with that pressure that has been built up so far?
Well, I'm going to just say a few things about how the world works, as in like beyond everything around you and your work and AI, right? It's about communication, because it's not going to be a thing where in the end, AI is going to talk to AI. There is going to be ultimately some person at the end of it, or some convincing at the end of it. Now, it is actually going to come to a place where there's going to be some filtering by AIs, because I know I'm working on it. I'm sure I'm not the only one. I'm trying to have virtual assistants. I'm trying to clone myself. As you heard, I've cloned my voice already. I'm actually working on cloning myself to see whether that's a viable thing to put on my website. So I would ask I would say that then what you can try to work on from a communications perspective is, how do you then communicate more effectively? Now, that could be to an AI, but more likely it's going to be a real person. And if you are going to be more successful ultimately in communicating to other people, either in your relationships or your business, then the chances that you're going to have success in whatever way you look at success is going to be higher. And I would say, instead of just leaving it to chance and hoping that all of it's going to be fine, maybe take the time and find out. I mean, I'm not saying come to me only, but get on the YouTubes and look for those things that talk about that, because there has been no better time to learn. And there's been, I think, no more critical time to learn. We have to learn a lot and a lot quicker than those around us are going to learn.
That's a powerful statement, that the most important thing is to learn right now. And with that learning thought, let's close today's podcast session. And for the benefit of our audience, if you really want to connect with Joe, and you should, to understand how you can increase your gravitas and understand the studio setup that can increase your gravitas, especially when you are having a high critical stake meeting with investors or somebody else, LinkedIn profile of Joe Augustin is shown below. You can always go back and refer to that. Do provide him a comment and testimonial. And with that thought, let's close the session today. Thanks, Joe, for joining us on VectoScalar Tech Talk.
Well, thanks for having me, and thanks for watching, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Have a nice day ahead.